How's it going, guys? Welcome back to another YouTube channel video. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Bilstein 5100 suspension setup that I have on my 5th gen 4Runner. I've put just around 10,000 miles on this setup, so we're going to talk about some of the things that I like, don't like, and if it's worth getting for your 4Runner in 2025. All right, so now that we're on the road, let's first talk about what my previous suspension setup was and what I have right now. So before this, I had the stock 4Runner limited suspension, the cross relative absorption suspension system, and I've talked about it in depth in a previous video. Make sure to check that out. But essentially it's a complicated system. With these shocks, you have a set of hydraulic lines that connect tubes, transfer fluid between them, and it's made for on-road performance, and while it works, it's great. However, these are known to fail pretty frequently. So at 70,000 miles, my shock started to leak a little bit. The dealership quoted me $4,500, so you could see why I went down the path that I did. So now jumping to my current setup, I am running a Bilstein 5100 shock. I'm running OME Springs, or Old Man Emu, and I'm running SPC upper control arms. Now this entire kit that I got is from Yoda Mafia. I believe it came in somewhere between $1,500 to $1,700. And the guys over there are super great, great customer service. Make sure to check them out if you plan on getting any parts for your Toyota. And now that I've had this system for right around 10,000 miles, I've gotten to know it very well. I've gotten to know what its characteristics are like and what it's good at and what it's not so good at. So let's first talk about the shocks. Now, when you talk about shocks, things can get super complicated super fast. There are so many variables that come into play, and there are so many new technologies that companies are incorporating into their designs to make their shocks even better. However, for this video, we're going to talk about what I believe is one of the biggest driving factors for these vehicles and the shocks, and that is the shock piston valving and the associated damping curve. So the piston valving in the shock will directly control the relationship between the velocity of the shock and the force exerted by the shock. So what do I mean by the velocity and the force of the shock? So when it comes to shocks, there are two major components. You have your piston rod and piston, and you have your shock tube. Now the piston rod and piston move inside of that shock tube up and down. That's what gives you your suspension travel, and the amount of hydraulic fluid that's allowed to pass through that piston is what drives that actual compression and rebound force. So the velocity is usually measured in inches per second, and that is the velocity of that piston rod that's moving inside that shock tube, and the force exerted is usually measured in pounds, which is the force that is exerted back onto that piston rod by the hydraulic fluid that's passing through or allowed to pass through. So when a shock is tested, it's tested in a shock dyno. So essentially it's a machine that applies different velocities to the shock and measures the force exerted. Now, using all these metrics, they could plot it on a 2D graph with the velocity being on the x-axis and the force being on the y-axis. And the curves that you get out of this test are what the damping curves are. So when it comes to piston valving and damping curves, there are three major types. You have your digressive piston valving, your linear, and your progressive. So let's first talk about the progressive valved piston. When you're moving at low velocities, the force exerted on that piston rod will also be low. However, as you increase that velocity, as the name suggests, the force exerted on the piston rod will increase progressively. So what does this translate to in the real world? When you're moving at low velocities, the shock is going to be very compliant since there's a lower force exerted on the piston rod. That piston and piston rod can move freely inside of that shock tube. So this is going to be good for off-roading. It's going to absorb a lot of the bumps, obstacles, and imperfections and the rough terrain that you're going over. However, it's not going to be super great on road. It's going to feel a little bit sloppy. It's going to have a lot of body roll, a lot of brake dive, and you won't get a ton of responsiveness. However, when you increase your velocity, like I mentioned, you're also going to progressively increase that force. So as you get to higher speeds, the suspension will stiffen up. So maybe at highway speeds, you'll feel some of the bumps a little bit more than you would at those lower speeds. Now, if we have progressive valving over here, let's jump to the other side of the spectrum and talk about the digressive valving setup. Now with a digressive valved piston, at lower velocities you are going to have a higher force exerted on that piston rod, and as that velocity increases, the force will sort of plateau, and you'll see that it won't increase as much as that progressive valved piston does. So what does this translate to when you're actually driving? At lower speeds, let's say around town, you'll find that the suspension is stiffer, you won't have as much body roll, and you won't have as much brake dive. And then as you increase your velocity, the suspension will become a little bit more compliant, a little bit smoother, and you won't feel some of the bumps that you would at lower speeds. So what is this good for? This is great for on-road driving. You'll have a lot of responsiveness when you're driving around town, going through corners, coming to a stop, and then as you hit those higher speeds, the suspension will smooth out a little bit, and you'll feel less of those imperfections in the road as you're driving down. Now, if you do plan on doing some off-roading, this digressive valved setup might be a little bit stiff. It might not absorb the bumps and the imperfections and the rough terrain like you would want it to. So this setup is definitely good for on-road and maybe not so good for some serious off-roading. And the third type of piston valving that we have is the linear. Now, as this name suggests, as the velocity increases, the force exerted on the piston rod also increases, but it increases linearly. Now, this falls in between the characteristics of a digressive and progressive setup. So a lot of people say it's kind of the best of both worlds. You'll get pretty decent on-road performance and get some of that compliance when you're off-roading. Now, with the shock valving laid out, my Bilstein 5100s are a digressive valved shock. So these are going to be great for on-road performance and maybe some light trails, light off-roading once in a while, but mainly tailored to your daily driving. So around town, I have great responsiveness. I don't have a ton of body roll going through corners and coming to a stop. I have minimal brake dive. And then as I get towards those higher speeds, I definitely feel the suspension starting to smooth out. Now that threshold speed I notice is right around, I'd say 35 miles an hour. Anything above that, you'll feel that the suspension kind of softens a little bit, is a little bit more compliant, and anything below that you'll feel is a little bit stiffer. Now when I say stiffer or stiff, it's not overly stiff. You're not gonna feel every single little imperfection on the road. You're not gonna be jolted around. It's still relatively compliant, and you won't get tired of it on long road trips or daily driving. Now, if you do plan on doing some moderate to serious off-roading, definitely take a look at some of the other options, like those with a linear or progressive valving setup. For my purposes, just daily driving this vehicle, being a mall crawler, doing some light off-roading, I really think these Bilstein 5100 shocks have been perfect for my setup. And not to mention, Bilstein has been around for quite a while. They make some great products. Even some manufacturers put in their products from the factory into their vehicles. So they've been proven, they've been reliable. So I'm definitely glad to have a set of these on my vehicle. So now that we've talked about the shocks in depth, let's talk about the springs. So like I mentioned, I have Old Man Emu springs. I have the 2885 springs in the front and the 2895E springs out back. And this allows for a 2.5-inch lift in the front and a 2-inch lift in the rear. And this is for a light or stock load 4Runner. If you have any accessories like a steel front bumper or rear bumper, any overlanding gear, maybe a rooftop tent, definitely look at some of the other options that OME has, like the medium duty and heavy duty coils. This will just account for the extra weight that you have, adjust the spring rates, and allow you to achieve the desired lift that you want. Now, a popular option for Bilstein 5100s on 4Runners is to remove the front spring on the stock suspension and install it onto the Bilstein 5100. However, with doing this, if you want to achieve a desired lift, you're gonna have to set that preload collar to a different setting, and it essentially preloads or compresses the spring to achieve that lift height that you want. In doing so, you'll probably stiffen up the suspension, cause it to ride a little bit harsher, and that just wasn't something that I was looking for. However, with the OME setup, you actually set the preload collar all the way to the lowest setting, so you get that full range of motion in the spring, and the lift height is actually achieved through the spring itself. Now, with that being said, I have no complaints about these springs. They ride super well, and they pair up with these Bilstein 5100s really well. Just make sure that if you do plan on using this setup, you look at your load levels and match it to the right spring to ensure that you're getting the perfect ride. And let's not forget, OME has been around for a long time, and they've been in the overlanding game for quite a while. Even Toyota put some of their products into their vehicles from the factory, which is really cool to see. Definitely glad to have these OME springs on my vehicle as well. And finally, let's talk about these SPC upper control arms. Now, these are sort of a topic of debate. Some people say that they are really great. Some people say that they're not so great in terms of reliability. However, in the last 10,000 miles that I've had them, I've had zero issues. They have an OE style ball joint and bushings, so you don't need to maintain them, you don't need to re-grease them. And the set of upper control arms that I got actually have the new ball joint design. So it seems like OME was listening to some of the complaints and feedback they've been getting and worked on a new design to implement. So I'm definitely excited to see how these turn out and how these work. The guys at SPC are awesome. They have great customer service. If something goes wrong with your upper control arms, just feel free to reach out to them, especially if you're still under warranty, and they'll make sure to get it resolved for you. Now, with the SPC upper control arms being a ball joint, yes, you're not going to get as much motion and range of motion, articulation as you would with a uniball setup. However, with a uniball setup, you need to constantly re-grease them. And sometimes if dirt gets into the system, it causes it to fail. And that's just not something that I was looking for and not something that was appropriate for my uses with my 4Runner. But for my purposes, these upper control arms have been great. They're strong enough. They are a hybrid tubular and forged steel design. They allow for me to get that extra added caster, which puts my 4Runner's alignment into spec. Now, I know with 2.5 inches of lift, you can probably get away with using your stock 4Runner upper control arms. However, these came in the kit. They weren't that difficult to install. I already had everything off the vehicle. I might as well just swap them out while I have the suspension out. You do need 2 people to install it. One person to help you guide that bolt through while someone else is holding the upper control arm into place. But it really wasn't that bad, and now I have that peace of mind that I can get my 4Runner's alignment into spec no matter what with that added caster. Now, I definitely will be making another video talking about these upper control arms and how they last over time, so make sure to stay tuned for that. Maybe a 20,000 mile or 25,000 mile update for you guys. Now that we talked about all of the different suspension components that I have on my vehicle, I really think this is a great cohesive package for these 4Runners. So to go back to that question of if I think that this is a appropriate or valid or viable option in 2025 for your 4Runner, I would say absolutely if you plan on daily driving and doing some light off-roading. If you plan on doing any moderate to heavy off-roading, definitely check out some of the other options like the progressive or linear valved shocks and maybe a uniball upper control arm setup. However, this setup has been perfect for me so far, and I have zero complaints about it. Now, if you have any questions about this setup, make sure to leave them in the comment section down below. I'll be happy to answer them for you guys. And make sure to subscribe to follow more 4Runner content. We also have more vehicles coming to the channel soon, including a Lexus LC500, which I'm really excited to bring out to you guys. So make sure to stay tuned for that, subscribe for the content, and as always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you soon.